Good afternoon. This is Reginald Andre with ARC Solvers, and we are doing a cross collaboration with the Miami business leaders and the ARC Solvers cybersecurity and IT services. As one of the main type of businesses that ARC Solvers does, we know we have a lot of property managers, CAMs for condominium and HOA in South Florida. We always would like to do these type of educational webinars so that you can know about what's going on and how it relates to your building. And today we have Barry Slyper of Winn Connectivity, and we're going to be talking about commercial buildings, apartments, condos, and how they all must have two-way radio communication, enhancement, signal booster systems, testing, and installation. These systems, also known as public safety systems, is installed in the facility to enhance the radio frequency bands used by first responders and safety professionals. Barry will also be talking about the recent state law in Florida that requires these commercial and residential buildings to be tested, designed, and permitted by December the 31st, 2022, with installation by December 31st, 2024. So again, if you are a property manager, a board member, if you're owner of a building of a multifamily or office building, you're going to want to listen to this webinar with Barry so you can find out all about the different rules that's going to be happening coming on December 2022. With all that said, Barry, good afternoon. How's it going?
Andre, good afternoon. It's always great to be with you in one of these type discussions. We've done it before, and I'm excited to do it again today.
Awesome. Where are you today? I know you were traveling a few months ago.
I am back in Florida and excited to be back here. I've been out on the West Coast, out in California for several months prior, but back here in Florida, very, very busy, working with several projects right now with public safety.
Awesome. Well, as I mentioned, this topic is going to be very interesting because we know a lot of things that's happening in the South Florida market, and now, of course, governments are now, looking very deeply into a lot of these buildings, and especially with the law that has been passed. So before we get into all that, let's talk about public safety DAS systems, DAS system. Let's go ahead and talk about that. What is that?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. A lot of people say to me, Barry, what is public? It's in communication system for first responders. Public safety DAS utilizes BDAs, a bidirectional amplifier technology, which provides an enhanced two-way radio service via an antenna system. This ensures that when our first responders, they can maintain wireless communications within a building during an emergency, like a fire, a medical emergency, a natural disaster, or other life-threatening events. A BDA, or bidirectional antenna amplifier system, is an in-building communication system that brings wireless signals into the structure from outside. It amplifies those signals with a signal booster, and then evenly distributes the amplified signals via a distributed antenna system in the building. And this is so important. A good example of this would be is 9/11 occurred. Firemen and police officers could not communicate properly inside the World Trade Center. And a lot of them lost their lives because of that. So this triggered a lot of changes to codes, greatly improving communications for first responders and ensuring that their radios will work wherever they go in a building.
I see. So right now, is that something where because we talked about the laws, and I know we're going to be talking about that, but is that something that a lot of buildings that may be, say, 20 years or older, they lack?
Correct. That's a big deal, especially right here in Florida. Florida is one of the states that the public safety is now mandatory. And so I'm seeing tremendous activity with businesses. It could be commercial real estate. It could be high-rise residential, high-rise condominiums that are older buildings that need these systems. So the newer buildings, not when I say newer buildings, any new construction now cannot even get a certificate of occupancy without having a public safety system in the building in Florida. So it really relates more so to all the older buildings that don't have systems in place and that are, meet the codes and the requirements that all the different jurisdictions put out. So everything code, I don't want to get too complicated into codes,
Right.
but a lot of the codes are a little different in all municipalities. It could be different in Dade County from Broward County. The fire marshals ask for different types of things to be done.
I see. So now with this new law, basically 2022, people got to get started.
They must get started, okay, or they're going to be left behind, and they're going to be paying a steep price at the end of the day. There's going to be fines levied, and this is important stuff. It's even with COVID, the legislation did push back a little bit on the timing. However, the smarter operators and condo boards, et cetera, realize that there's no time to waste with this. If need be, they need to get started now. I mean, they're lining up at the door. It's what they're doing.
Yeah. So we talked about getting started. So okay. So first of all, how will a property manager even know if they have it? Like, is that something their building engineer will know?
Yeah. Their building engineer would know. Their fire safety system folks would know. It's just at that point it becomes a process of understanding. It's a step-by-step process. I like to say it's almost like a 5-step process.
Okay.
First step would be understanding the code. Most importantly, the process to hire a reputable company that's knowledgeable on the local and national codes, as well as the local authority, which is known as the AHJ, is mandating in the market. And understanding, what the local municipality is enforcing and what inspectors will be looking out for, that'll likely save you. It's going to save a building a significant amount of money and upfront expenditures if they know the codes and understand and work with a company that knows the codes. Now, I've run into this already with some problems with companies that have hired, condos that have hired a company that didn't understand the codes, and it cost them a lot more money than was originally budgeted for.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let me ask you another question, Barry. So the scenario of, let's just say someone does have a public safety DAS, but it's 10 years old. Is that something where once you have it, you have it? Or is it something like in IT where we're always upgrading?
Yeah, there's upgrades. There is definitely upgrades. It's not just once you have it, Every year there's an inspection required. So the AHJ, fire marshal come out and they will do an inspection. And in some cases, some of the systems that are old, some of them may have to be upgraded and changed.
I see. And tell me, what are you seeing out there? So when you're visiting these properties, older buildings, so what are you seeing?
Yeah, well, here's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing buildings that don't have public safety systems.
Okay.
In fact, you introduced me to a building a month ago, and one of those, and we went out there. We did a site survey. Big building, 500,000 square feet, 2 towers, no public safety in the building. Big concern it's a condo, big concern for the owners, the board of directors. So they're starting right now. We went out, we did a site survey, we did a grid test, and then we designed and actually did a presentation to them to be able to get this done. And they're actually very excited about that. And they had one other challenge I want to bring up, relates back to our previous call, is another big challenge they had was in their parking garage, which is below ground. Well, not really below ground in Florida, but it's at the start of the building, it's above ground, but still. Bottom line is they have terrible communication there, no cell coverage. So we're going to, at the same time, when we put in the public safety system, we're going to put in what we call a DAS system, which will bring cellular services into the garage, which is very key to them.
Oh yeah, that's actually very interesting, and it's interesting the client that we're talking about, because that is a luxury high-end building. So it's very surprising. So it's not even just like the 40, 50-year-old building. It's building built 20 years ago. I guess that just wasn't thought of, or that need wasn't there at the time.
There was no requirement. There was just no requirement. So it's extra cost. I mean, these a system like that could be in the neighborhood of $400,000, $500,000. And that's, kind of went through a lot of questions about, well, how do you pay for that? Well, and that's a great question, because most people are going to ask that at the end of the day after you present, a solution. It's, how do we do this? And what we're able to offer is pretty much 3 different ways to pay for this. I mean, I'll relate this to a condo first. Condo boards have, reserves that they use, but sometimes the reserves are already earmarked for something else. So we can actually finance it, actually like a traditional lease, with a 5-year, 7-year dollar buyout. Or the big thing that's going on right now is do it as a service. And what that means is we'll go in and we'll build it. We'll design it, we'll build it, we'll maintain it, we'll manage it, all of the above. And it's a monthly payment then back to Winn. And that usually is a 7 to 10-year agreement. The good news with that is if there is any tech refresh that needs to be done, you can do that within that type of program. So that does make sense to some condo boards that might be short with their reserves and don't want to do a major assessment. But it's also big in the commercial real estate space, where buildings just don't want to make that capital expenditure. They rather do it as an OpEx.
Awesome. Well, that's interesting because, I could definitely see, $500,000 invoice or something like that, or estimate. Definitely you'll want the building to finance it. So let's talk about the mandatory part of Florida. So as I mentioned, it needs to be tested, designed, and permitted by December 31st with installation by December 31st, 2024. So does that mean that it normally takes about 2 years from the time the numbers are finished to the time it's actually installed, or is it much faster?
No, it's much faster. Much faster. You could be looking at installs depending upon the size of the building and what's really involved with the infrastructure part of a building, because a lot of these buildings that are already built don't always think ahead. And there could be instances where there has to be, pathways to get this cable. And this type of cable that's done for public safety cannot share space in any conduit with any other cable. It has to be its own. So it's a big thing with design. And once you get past the design stage and the permitting stage, after that, these things move along pretty rapidly. Depending on the square footage, it can go anywhere from 45 days to 95 to 120 days to be built. The reason that the legislation went out so far is there's so many buildings that are not in compliance that they had to give everybody a chance to get started. Okay, and it's a lot of work.
It's called grace.
Yeah, it is. It is kind of. It's a grace period. It pretty much is a grace period. You're 100% right. And the Florida Fire Prevention Code has several deadlines approaching, and it requires these businesses to update their systems to ensure compliance with all the laws and regulations. And building owners, they're responsible for the safety of the occupants in their facilities, just like board members have a fiduciary responsibility to their fellow owners in their building. So, businesses or condos are going to be required to meet the coverage requirements of the fire code, and the National Fire Protection Association requires 95% coverage, but the National Fire Association protection requires 99% coverage in all the important areas as designated by the local fire department. So that's why I've said every jurisdiction is a little different. I mean, the guys in Dade County are doing things a little different than the guys in Broward County. So the good news is we have people on board that understand all that and are dealing with these guys and guys and gals on a daily basis. And, we're very much aware of what the codes are and understanding what's needed. And that's the big difference when you're going out there and you're starting to engage and look for a company. You want to look for a company that really understands this. And when they put a proposal in front of you, it should be a turnkey proposal, meaning at the end of the day, once they've designed this, and if they made a mistake, they should eat it. And we're willing to do that, okay? Because we understand the codes, we understand what's entailed to design a build for a building or a condo or whatever facility it may be for, and we know what's needed, and we don't cut corners. This is life, saving type systems. You don't cut corners here. You're not going to get away with it anyway. It's not going to pass. So it's just the bottom line.
Yeah, and you mentioned since you're going vertical, what other things because I know we talked about it about Wi-Fi projects and stuff, because since
Sure.
you're doing that project, I mean, like you said, it has to be its own pipe, it has to be its own conduit. But
Sure.
since your guys are there, what other features can the building improve on as far as the amenities?
Well, that's a great question. That relates back to our first conversation that we had with
Mhm.
a lot of buildings are struggling right now with good connectivity, as you know, in the building. Now, Wi-Fi is great, okay, but Wi-Fi, when you start getting into some of these bigger buildings, like the one that we're talking about right now, all right, the two towers like that. You're talking about connectivity that's really, really needed by cell phone users, and that requires a neutral host DAS system. And the way we do that again is we build from the top down. Okay, so we start at the rooftop with a donor antenna in this case. All right, and that donor antenna is going to pick up carrier signal and bring it back into the building, which will deliver a much stronger signal than the building has. And a lot of buildings struggle, with that. And the reason we go neutral host is because not everybody has AT&T or T-Mobile or Verizon. Everybody has a different carrier. So you definitely want to have a neutral host system in there. Now, the other things that brings to the table, it also helps you with security. All right. We're living in this, touch-free environment now. Even condos, and you're seeing it in the hospitality industry, they're going to keyless entry. Okay. And no one wants to touch anything anymore. So, just opening that door, with your cell phone makes a lot of sense. But you need to have some good connectivity, when you're on the inside, and just like around the building as well. And that's what we provide with that. And plus, when the Wi-Fi gets tough, we call you in to work with us to help design a good Wi-Fi solution for the building, and we could implement that as well with you.
Yeah, and it's amazing, a lot of these high-end, especially the high-end condominiums here in South Florida, where a unit owner is spending what, $500,000 and up on their units, and they can't even do a simple phone call inside their unit because there's no good cell phone reception. It doesn't matter if it's Verizon, AT&T, it's just bad reception. And
Right.
Unfortunately, I'm even seeing it on the new construction. Like, I would think new construction that's budgeted and that's implemented. But some of the introductions I made to you were brand new luxury buildings in South Florida, and residents spent a lot of money and they can't even get one bar in their unit.
Right. So here's the challenge with that one, and we don't have to mention any names, but it actually is a very, very luxurious building in Miami, and it's a big building. And yeah, the developers did not think about one of the most important things, especially if you're spending, $500,000 is on the low end. If you're spending $1 million for an apartment in a building, and you're paying $5,000 a month in maintenance, and you pull into your garage and you can't make a phone call, and you go into your unit, you can't make a phone call. We live and die by the cell phone. I mean, who has a landline anymore? And everybody's on their cell phone. And even if they have their office phone, it's twinned to their cell phone. So long story short, what happens at this point, because it's a brand new construction, I've got to wait until the building becomes fully occupied by the owners, the residents, all right, and then go back to the residents and be able to bring a DAS system into the building and give them what they need. And when you break it down on a per door basis, on some of these buildings, it's actually small dollars. And when you're spending $3,000 to $5,000 a month in maintenance, what's another $50 a month? It's not. It's to know that you can make a phone call that could potentially be a phone call that's about your business, could be worth $1 million. I mean, I've seen it happen where people just complain that they lost a client because they're in the middle of a negotiation and they couldn't speak to them.
Yeah, and I've seen actually one time we did this residential project, and it's right by the arena. And they had very, very bad cell phone, and the guy was renting. And he basically, when the lease was up, his number one reason why he left that unit was because the building just had horrible. So it's definitely, yes, an investment, but then there's ROI that's immediate once that something like that set up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're seeing more and more buildings. Here's what I'm finding when I go in and start talking about public safety, and I just ask a few more questions. I go, well, how's the cell service in the building?
Mm-hmm.
And they go, it's horrible. And
Mm-hmm.
the reason most of these buildings do have horrible cell service is because, first of all, they've got a lot of concrete. They got a lot of steel. They got a lot of glass, and the signal's not penetrating. So what do you need to do? Do you have to stand on your balcony all day long and make phone calls? This is South Florida. It's 90. Right. It's 90 degrees out there.
Yeah.
So it's really important to have a system in place that makes sense. Not only that it's going to give you great connectivity, but financial sense too. And what we're able to do in a lot of cases, like I mentioned earlier in the conversation, is do it as a service. Let us build it for you. We'll build it. We'll put everything together, and we'll come back to you and give you a monthly number. And that number is going to cover everything. And then what you do is, in a condo environment, it's real easy. The same way they break out maintenance, it's based on square footage. Okay, so if your condo is 2,000 square feet, you pay this. If you're 2,500 square feet, you pay a little bit more. So what? Bottom line is you're getting exactly what you want, which is great connectivity. And, that's really important. But on the public safety side, why? We believe that, people's safety should always be a priority. Okay, and poor communication inside a building can be the difference between life and death. We're committed to delivering the best quality systems possible that the police, fire, and the medical staff can rely on to do their job. And like we all know, deadlines are now in place for testing and compliance of new existing buildings in many cities around the country, and that list is growing. Okay, where this is becoming mandatory. So, our team of public safety engineers, they'll install a system in the facility that will give the emergency responders radio coverage that will work for them, that they'll be able to communicate and save lives, including their own.
Awesome, Barry. Well, this was very informative. We know a lot of people are going to be watching this on the replay. We're going to actually be sending this out to all of our condominium clients, because we know that more than likely they don't have it. And I've been in many of the buildings, and I know they definitely don't have good cell phone signal. So Barry, what's the best way someone watching this right now can get in touch with you?
Easiest way to get in touch with me is via email, or just go to LinkedIn and just hit me on LinkedIn. My contact information is there. It's real easy to get a hold of me, and I return everybody's calls, and I look forward to meeting more folks. Every time we do one of these, Andre, the phone rings. So it's good, informative information. It's good information for everybody, whether they do business with us or not. At the end of the day, when I deal with folks, and I've been in South Florida for over 45 years, when I go out to see somebody, it's all about relationships. We're out there to work with you, for you, and help you. There's no, pressure. This is not a pressure type scenario. This is what makes sense. And we want to try to build a solution that works for you.
Absolutely. And that's what the Miami Business Leaders is all about. We are just trying to connect people and just make sure that we bring people that have been vetted. You came highly recommended, and we know that you do good work. And speaking of good work, it's not only South Florida, right?
No, not only South Florida. We are really nationwide.
Yeah.
Our home base is it's in Chicago. Too cold for me, but I'm back and forth. As you know, I jump back and forth from here to the West Coast. So a lot, and there's a lot of stuff going on in California with public safety right now. So that's actually big to me. There's several other markets that are just booming now with public safety and how important it is to get it done now. But I'm so happy to be back in Florida, quite frankly, and working with you as well, and meeting a lot of different new folks out there that have a need. and trying to put together a program that makes sense for their property, and building a solution, like I said, that's cost efficient and is going to work for them, and they're not going to have to worry anymore about public safety.
Yep. And most importantly, you have to do it. So thank you so much, Barry, for having us. Thank you, everyone, for watching the Miami Business Leaders. We are going to be putting a link. If you are not part of the Miami Business Leaders group, we would love to have you where this conversation continues. There's a lot of referrals. We always get feedback and say, hey, thank you for connecting me with this person and that person. So definitely join the Miami Business Leaders group. And Barry, you're going to have to come back again and just keep us updated and let us know, because I'm sure with your market and, of course, with the new rules coming because of the situations that we've had here in South Florida, I know there's probably going to be even more things that the legislator is going to put down. So we would love for you to be back on once that time comes.
Thanks, Andre. I always appreciate working with you. It's great to see you. And thanks again for having me on today. Appreciate it.
All right.